Chunk nuts roasting on an open hung. Chunk frost nipping at your hung.
Oh, this is worse.
Chunk tide carols being sung by the hung.
Sing them. No, pause. Sing the Chunk Tide carols.
We'll finally find your sleep to me.
Hello, and welcome to Two Chunks and a Hunk, our movie podcast where we give pumps and dumps. I'm Jordan Wonders, and this week and this week only, I am your chunk.
I'm Doge, and I am Chunksty, the Chunk Man.
My name is David Bleeson. I'm Huckleberry Finn tonight.
If you guys are listening and not watching, David just flipped the little fluff ball on the end of his Santa hat over the other side of his head.
Which, can we talk about the fact that in the Santa Claus movie, he has the biggest hat I've ever seen.
It goes down to like his waist.
I love that hat. I think it's cool.
It's great.
It's really cool.
It is huge.
My head is so big that I still think it would only come to like my neck.
We've been meaning to talk to you about that. It looks kind of gross.
I just have the biggest head. I need to see a doctor and get some of my head let out. If there's a head doctor out there, if you could go ahead and just give me a call at beep. That was us censoring my phone number.
Coming this fall to ABC, Doc Noggins, the head doctor.
Doc Noggins, the head doctor.
The head doctor. He's the head of a hospital.
Oh, shoot.
The head of a head hospital.
It's just called Head Doctor. That's
Head
the name of the
doctor.
show.
Head doctor.
Head doctor. Yep.
Dr. Ted Noggins.
Starring George Clooney.
Ted Noggins.
Doc Noggins.
Starring George
Clooney.
For
Absolutely.
sure, it's George Clooney.
And every time you see George Clooney, it's just like, okay,
All right.
so
Doc Noggins. Never leave home without it. It's a
well,
back credit card.
we are talking about what movie?
Anyway,
this week we are
if you're
talking
still
about
watching somehow.
we are talking about the Christmas classic, The Santa Claus 3: The Escape Clause. And I think there's no better way to start us off than to kick it over to your friend and mine, Dosh.
With a synopsis.
That surprises me every week. I never know you're going to do it. The Santa Claus 3 picks up
Right where we left off. With Perry White.
Yeah, still no Perry White. If you
Perry Watch.
If you tune into this podcast hoping to hear about the Yuletide exploits of one Mr. Lawrence Fishburne,
Sorry, Brother
Yeah.
Larry's nowhere to be found.
Lawrence. Santa Claus 3 opens with Carol, the new Mrs. Claus, whose name is Carol. And we didn't touch on that pun last week.
Yeah, we
What?
never even
Her name is
mentioned it.
Carol, as in
Get
Christmas Carol.
Stupid.
She
A
is
picnic-basque. A Christmas carol.
Santa. She is a teacher at an elf school. And she's kind of a bad teacher because she doesn't control her class very well.
I have a major problem with the elf school, but we'll get to it.
Just
We're gonna get there.
buckle in, enjoy this bumpy ride, and then we'll
Yeah,
go back
I
and look at all
guess.
the pop and plot holes. She is a teacher at an elf school,
Yeah.
and she's telling a story to the elves, and she says, "I fell in love with Santa Claus, and then the most magical thing happened." Yeah, we have a flashback.
It's a flashback noise.
Clearly.
And Santa and Mrs. Claus are having a little bit of marital strife. She's worried that she's going to deliver her baby on Christmas Eve.
Who's not? Am I right? Who's not worried about that?
Oh, I thought you meant the baby who is not Christmas Eve.
The
And I was like,
baby's not Christmas Eve.
definitely not, because one is a day and one is a baby.
Yeah,
She's worried that she's going to be delivering whilst he's delivering. What? 10 stars for this movie.
And so she's worried about that, and Santa keeps saying, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And then she says she wants to be around tall people, not elves. And so Santa's like, I'm going to bring my in-laws up here, except they don't know I'm Santa.
And they can't know.
And they can't know I'm Santa because reasons. And then Santa...
The reason given is literally, well, they don't keep secrets good.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, that's abandoned. Anyway.
Yeah.
And so Santa also accidentally brings his ex-wife, her husband, and their daughter to the North Pole to hang out with his in-laws.
My
Meaning
boy.
that we get another wonderful portrayal of Neil Miller by the incomparable Judge Reinhold.
Well, when you say another wonderful, Neil gets progressively less good every movie, and
Yes.
he's my favorite character in the movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love Neil, but
Okay.
but in this one he's garbage.
So as if that family drama wasn't enough, enter Jack Frost. He's icy. He's blue. He's neglected. He wants his own holiday.
Same.
Frost giving.
Frostgiving, the frost of July. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny too.
He's like, I'm open. Those are just.
I hate how his whole plot is basically just, hey dog, just like give him a day.
Yeah,
like
for
all you have to
real.
do is be like, hey, December 1st, it's Frost Day, and we celebrate the beginning of winter. at the
super
end.
easy.
So yeah, Jack Frost wants a holiday. They won't give him one. And so he comes up with a plan to steal Santa's snow globe and activate the escape clause, whereby Santa holds onto his own personal snow globe and says the phrase,
Snugglebub.
snow globe, and says the phrase, I wish I'd never been Santa at all.
What?
At all. And so
at all?
they're whisked back in time, and we get kind of a weird little look at what the world would be like if instead of Tim Allen, Jack Frost was Santa Claus.
Yeah.
He turns the North Pole into a theme park. He monetizes Christmas. And it seems to be a bit of a social commentary that doesn't quite land.
Yeah.
And so then, predictably, Tim Allen, Santa Claus, not Jack Frost Santa Claus, Tim Allen, Scott Calvin, is able to thwart Jack Frost's plan, become Santa once again, deliver his baby. Buddy is born.
Ugh.
Santa doesn't deliver. Oh, the worst name for a baby. If you're watching this and your name is Buddy, I'm so sorry. Are your parents Mr. and Mrs. Claus?
The child OBGYN is the one who delivers, which is
that's right.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm not really okay with that. And then Lucy, through the power of her magic hugs, thaws out Jack Frost and her parents. And Jack Frost, once thawed, is just regular Martin
Just
Short.
becomes average Martin
Just
Short.
regular, everyday, Monday through Friday Martin Short.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he's so sweet, and I loved it.
No.
Yes.
Just like this movie.
And then the movie ends on a freeze frame of Buddy the Claus.
Which was awful.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, the movie ends on a freeze frame.
I
Oh
thought they
my
were gonna
gosh.
make him wink. That's how.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how cliche it was.
Yeah. So that's the Santa Claus 3. And
I thought he was gonna be like,
Santa Claus 3, and I'm very sorry that you had to listen to me talk about this. and I'm
Slash
sorry
maybe
that
watch
we
it.
had to watch it.
yeah, it was not good.
So we start this movie, like we said, with Carol, who's now embraced Mrs. Claus. She's in the classroom, and they're like, "We don't want to hear about all these glass objects."
Every time. No, I love
Because
it.
they're from New Jersey.
Never
They're from-
change it. I love it.
Like, we're tired of hearing all these stuff. I think I switched to like a Tennessee for a second.
We tired of hearing all this.
I don't know what that was.
So they're saying we're tired of all this basic elementary Christmas teaching.
Teach us what we want to know,
which is about the story.
You know, every teacher is like, yeah, I'll just teach you the stuff you want to
Why
know
can't
about.
we learn what
Yeah.
we want to learn?
So I have a couple things about this opening scene
Talk
right off the
about
bat. Number one, Carol doesn't look like she did at the end of Santa Claus 2, and it frustrates me.
Dump.
Number two, the little girl that plays the elf is the younger sister of the guy that plays Curtis the elf. Her name is Abigail Breslin, and she went on to do a lot of things Curtis didn't. Wonder why.
because she got the acting gene.
And he clearly didn't.
Did not.
But number three, and this is one of my bigger dumps for this movie, they set it up as though there's some importance to the flashback scene, but I honestly forgot that it was a flashback until the very end. Like
The
there was
whole
no
movie
point.
is a flashback.
Yeah, the whole movie's a flashback,
Yeah,
and it honestly doesn't make any sense.
It's just, you know why? It's so they can end with the baby, and he's not, like, they wanted to end with that screen through that freeze frame of the baby, and if they had not structured it as a flashback, they would have had to carry the movie through Christmas and have Santa come back, and it be like because this baby's like probably a couple of months old.
Yeah.
So this is like, we'll say March or April.
Well, but I love that that puts the whole concept of the movie, because the baby is still so young. She is telling this story to a bunch of elves that lived through this
they
happening.
were there.
Yeah, that's
they
a
were
good
there.
point.
Because that baby is maybe 2 months old.
Yeah,
like
they
you
were
said.
working
good
in
point.
they were like, they remember when Jack Frost took over the North Pole.
It just happened.
it just-
Jack Frost is probably still there looking like
tell
Martin
us the
Short.
story about a month ago.
Like it would literally be like if you guys were like, "Hey, will you guys tell me, or will you tell me a story?" And I was like, "Yeah." So today we started this podcast off by singing a Christmas song.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
like
Well, and here's the thing that also didn't make sense to me was the first flashback was her saying, "Oh, I'm gonna have the baby, I'm going," and they're rushing her in to deliver the baby, and then she's like, "Oh, it's a false alarm." But then at the end of the movie, they replay that scene in like fast forward, and it's the same exact scene.
Yeah.
It is. They're using the exact same footage.
But in the logic of that scene, that was a false alarm. Like they didn't do it. They didn't give us a new rush.
Well, I think we're supposed to assume that the movie is bookended by scenes in the classroom.
Yeah.
The movie is
Double bookended?
Double bookended by one false alarm and one actual delivery.
One real alarm.
But they just use the same
footage.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. There's so many like logical problems with this movie that don't even have anything to do with suspension of disbelief. Like where it's beyond to the point of like, I can get past it because it's a Santa movie. Like so many things where it's like, you didn't even try. And one of them is, you knew this baby was coming. Why are you still working on the delivery room?
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, we've talked about this in Santa Claus 2. They can't decide if these elves are children or if they're 500 years old.
Seriously?
Because
yes.
we're watching this classroom and we're like, oh, these are like the new elves that have to be taught.
But they look the same.
They look the same as the 700-year-old elves.
So it's either child elves look the same as adult elves, or this 35-year-old woman is teaching 700-year-old people things.
And we have to assume then in that logic that the elves, although live 700 years, they never grow out of their 10-year-old brains.
Which means that the OBGYN is a 10-year-old.
Yes.
And here's the other thing. We know that's not true because Bernard was old.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. I think my new headcanon for this is that the only reason they're in that classroom, like, I think they're getting paid to sit there and make Carol think that she has a purpose. I think that they're probably all just like,
great.
can you teach us something? And then they leave and they're like, oh my gosh, class was terrible today.
She's like, she did that wrong. Do you guys catch that?
I'm like so good at math. I've been alive for 700
You guys
years.
remember back during the Renaissance when we learned that for the first time? Yeah, Carol has no idea.
Okay, well, and let's fast forward because after we go from there, we find that Curtis has become elf number 1.
Okay.
He's taken Bernard's job. I know you want to dump right away.
Can I tell you why he has Bernard's job?
Tell
or do
me.
you want to have the honors?
No, please.
Curtis, he murdered Bernard.
Yeah, Curtis is a murderer.
Yeah, he murdered.
Killed Bernard and put on his
That's
suspenders.
the only
He's
way.
the Zodiac killer of the North
Bernard
Pole.
clause.
That's the only way he can be number 1 elf. Because the first thing he was like, hey, I'm number 1 elf now. And I was like, who the heck made Curtis number 1 elf?
Where did Bernard go?
That's
Bernard's not even there. What happened
and
to the elves?
not even mentioned either.
I'm glad you said that because my super dump for this movie is that Bernard is not in this movie.
Yeah.
Get out of my face with that. Hashtag bring back Bernard. But I'm going to say this though.
Yep.
My super pump for this movie is that Bernard is not in this movie because that means David Krumholtz, the actor that plays Bernard, made a really good life decision. So if you're keeping score at home, I'm out. Like, I just hit them both.
You can't talk anymore. That's it.
I don't know if do we know if he was offered the script? Because my thing was he really?
Yeah, he was.
Because my thing is, how would they bring him back? Because Curtis is 900 years old in Santa Claus 2.
But he's aged. He looks different at 906.
I believe
than he
there's
did at
5 years
900.
between Santa Claus 2 and Santa Claus 3.
Yeah.
2002 and 2006. It's 4 years.
So it's 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Curtis is aged. Like he's aged a good amount.
Yeah.
He looks like a teenager now. Well, so in the logic of this elf world,
He should
you
be
go
like
you go
a
900
billion
years
years
old and you don't age, and then when you hit 904, you hit a growth spurt.
And you age again.
Like I get that this is the real world and we can't help that actor is going to age, but I want to be lost in this movie. And I'm like, how the heck did Curtis age at 905?
Would you really have been all that bummed if just Curtis wasn't in this movie at all? If it was a different
and
elf.
actually, I do want to give a shout out to Spencer Breslin who plays Curtis because
We know you listen, Spence.
I think it takes a lot of courage to step out into a role this poorly. And so I want to say thank you for being so courageous to just phone it in for an entire
He
movie.
committed with all his heart.
I've never seen somebody go from almost no acting talent to 0 acting talent in 4 years.
To lose
That-
acting
like,
talent.
that was, for such a young, like upstart, like young actor.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It
Yeah,
was
it's
like,
so
It was
bad.
painful.
and part of me wonders if he was just like, I guess I'll do it, but like I'm like a teenager now. Like this isn't cool, man. Like it was so bad. Every scene he was in, he was just like, I know stuff.
The worst scene for me for his acting skill, if you want to call it that, is where
lack.
Jack
Lack of
Frost
acting
is
skill.
like, oh, it's so sad that you don't know where the snow globe is. He's like, I'm number 1 elf.
I know things.
I know things. It was terrible. But again, let's talk about the elf logic so we don't have to talk about it for the rest of the movie. Curtis is 900 years old.
904.
904 years old.
904,
And
yeah.
Jack Frost baits him by being like, oh, they don't tell you anything. And he's like, they tell me all the things. Here they are. You think he'd be like, I know what you're trying to do.
Well, how has Curtis in 900 years never met Jack Frost?
I know. Well,
Like the movie treats...
Do we know? I don't think we know that. He's met him, right?
This works perfectly for what a big dump for my movie is, which is how is nobody in this movie like, hey, by the way, Jack Frost is the one screwing everything up.
Yeah.
Like, just go ahead and kick him to
yeah,
the curb.
like this is typical
Because
Jack.
he's basically on probation. Like starting at the beginning of the movie, they're like, get him out of here. And Santa's like, I'll give him a chance. But if he messes this up, he's out. And then he messes it up consistently and nobody says anything.
But instead, Santa was like, let's turn this big old crusty icicle into Martin Short.
Well, and so I hate movies that rely on just like everything going wrong because they stress me out so much.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm so with
The
you.
entire scene, like the entire series of events, right when, and we'll get to the in-laws in just a second, but the entire scene when the in-laws show up and like Jack Frost is screwing with everything,
Messing up the North
I
Pole.
was literally just like hair in my hands, just like, please stop.
Me too.
I hate this so
Yeah.
much.
It's awful.
I thought I was weird. Like,
No.
I wanted to turn the movie off because I hated Jack Frost so much. And then I thought, okay, do I hate him because he's terribly written and I hate what he's
Yes.
doing and I hate the structure of this movie?
Yes.
Or did they nail it? And I hate
do a really good
I hate
job.
him so much.
It
Like
was,
I should.
To me, it was beyond the point of like, Santa's in trouble. And it was just like, please stop. Like, I was so uncomfortable. I was like sweaty. I had to pause the movie.
I'm so glad that you're with me because I hate movies where everything goes wrong and I'm just like,
Yeah,
stop,
yeah.
please guys, stop.
Because it's so easy.
And it
It's
wasn't-
like such an easy fix.
It is, but it also wasn't even played up for comedic effect. Like, there were points where it was like, this is dangerous.
This is awful.
And then on top of that, like it was a mixture between everything going wrong and like Carol's parents being so awful.
Yeah, they were
So it was
horrible.
just like everything that went wrong. Her dad was like, I bet this is your fault, fat boy. And it was like, whoa,
And
what?
I think those kind of things are symptomatic of this. Again, like we talked about last week, this movie has completely traded in their audience for
No, I agree
from
completely.
the first one, and it's now
Yeah.
like the people who were the target audience of the first one. It's now their children who are watching this one.
And a movie about Santa Claus dealing with his in-laws and delivering a baby would have been really interesting
Jack Frost
and funny
doesn't
on
need
his
to be
own.
in this movie.
Yeah.
Like even if the idea was like he's stressed out about his in-laws and his baby's coming, so he wishes he was never Santa and goes back in time and like has to regain being Santa again. That would be a very interesting concept.
I don't even like that.
I
time travel
don't love
element.
the time traveling thing that much, which by the way, I don't know if you remember that this movie was played up as though that was the main plot point. It takes about 15 minutes.
It really
total.
is 15 minutes.
It's about 15 minutes of this movie.
Yeah, and I felt like they set it up for an hour, and then
Knock it
Jack
down
Frost
real quick.
finally becomes Santa, and you're like, this movie has to end in like
10
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Question about the logic of that. He becomes Santa. Jack Frost lives an entire 12 years as Santa Claus.
But he
from
goes
the moment-
straight to
but
12
Tim
years.
Allen is teleported through time to 12 years later.
You
I
just
can't-
stuck the plot hole.
Well, I can't tell if that's the case or if the same thing happened to Jack Frost where he jumped in 12 years.
But he has that line-
does
he has that
say,
line.
Has it
He's
been
like,
12 years
I've been
already?
waiting for you. It's been 12 years. Like that would have been no place in this movie, but at least an interesting movie to watch of Tim Allen just like slugging through 12 years
Yeah.
of his life, knowing he could have been Santa.
And
but
like
he
the
accidentally whisked it
frustrating
away.
thing is like the escape clause is like, okay, well, like if you're ever tired of being Santa, but you don't want to die, you can wish that you weren't Santa anymore. It's like, okay, that's interesting. Like that's a cool way of like retiring. Nope, it resets everything.
Yeah.
So then it's like you lose all your friends and your family.
Yeah.
Who would take that? That's
Yeah.
worse than dying.
That is a good point.
And I think that reveals the true darkness underneath these movies
Yeah.
of like, here are your two ways out. Ruin your life or die.
Yep.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just and Charlie's still like, I'm coming for you, Dad.
Hang on. So if somebody retires and says, I wish I was never Santa, they still retain all of the knowledge of
Right.
the North Pole. How is the secret of Santa still kept? The SOS.
Let's talk about the secret of Santa because
What's the importance?
The reason they have to cover up that the North Pole is the North Pole by making
We
it
haven't even
Canada.
talked about the fact that they pretended it was Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it comes out of nowhere.
I'm gonna give that's my super pump.
Why?
Because I laughed the hardest when Carol was in the Christmas tree
Yes,
forest.
that is
I
so
did laugh
funny.
at the sound
It's
effects.
just
so
like
funny.
buy a tree from Canada, which is where you are.
right now, definitely right now.
Yeah.
You're there.
I loved it.
I did laugh at that.
And I love when they wake up and they're all surrounded by little people and they almost play on the American stupidity of
yeah,
like,
yeah.
have you ever been to Canada? And they're like, God, no, we've never been to Canada. They're like, well, then you don't know that they could be filled with
This
little
is what
people.
Canadians
And
look
I
like.
love that the way they convinced them that they were Canadians. They were just like, welcome to Canada.
Hey.
And they're like, all right, sounds legit.
That's very
Yeah.
funny. That's the one thing in this movie I don't have a problem
Yeah,
with.
that was
I
my
think that's
super fun.
funny.
I thought that was
I feel
funny.
like probably actual people from Canada were like,
people from where?
but what did I say?
Canada.
Oh, Canada.
But again, you just demonstrated that Americans do not care enough about Canada.
We lived with a Canadian for 4 years.
No,
I went to
Liam, we
Canada
love
this
you.
summer on my honeymoon.
That's good. You're the first one.
Oh, that's funny.
Someone said that Canada is like our attic. We forget it's up there, and then we go and we're like, there's a lot of cool stuff up here. Like, this is great.
I'm a big fan. But
I'm a big fan of that.
Well, so the logic of the secret, the SOS, the secret of Santa is if your in-laws come here and they find out this is North Pole, then we risk everything. But then we fast forward and Jack Frost has completely monetized and popularized the North Pole. How is that not ruining Christmas?
even more so, at the end of the movie, they're just like, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
Who cares?
It's just to create a false sense of high stakes.
Yeah.
Well, and this is another thing. So we know from experience that Santa can get from wherever to the North Pole in like an hour.
Yeah.
So why doesn't he just take Carol to her parents' house, spend time with her there, let her deliver the baby in a regular hospital, and then be like, hey, I actually have to work tonight, but I'll be back in a little bit. Go, come back the next morning and like,
Because then there's no movie.
I know,
Yeah, exactly.
but there shouldn't have been.
There
I guess
shouldn't
what
have
I'm
been a
saying.
movie. Yeah,
Is
that's
that bad of an alternative, though?
Yeah, that's true.
No, there's
So
no
let's talk
alternative
about
worse.
let's talk about somebody that we all loved in the last movie,
Curtis.
Bernard. Where is he?
Chet.
Oh,
Okay.
freaking Chet.
Freaking Chet.
Every movie they bump up the
How is it that
first
after
time
4
we
years,
see-
Chet is still like,
The first time we see the reindeer, there are 5 farts in less than 1 minute.
and then later on, there's still enough. He's like, how many beans does he eat? Get out of here.
That is a
Are you
rate
kidding
of
me?
1 fart per 10 seconds. That is absurd. That is a higher fart count than Shrek. That is absurd.
But Shrek's good.
Shrek is great, but that's part of the humor of Shrek. It's not even part of the Santa Claus thing.
Yeah. Well, and so
Fart per minute is
reindeers
way crazy.
reindeers
Yeah, these
fart,
RPMs are ridiculous.
and then Santa goes into his house with Laura, Neil, and Lucy
And Charlie.
And
Yeah,
Charlie.
Charlie's in this movie.
And Charlie goes, Charlie says, hey, Dad, glad to see you. Thanks for letting me go spend Christmas with my girlfriend in Colorado so I can snowboard. And then Charlie is gone.
Yep.
Until the last scene.
Charlie might as well have been like, hey, Dad, thanks for not letting me be in this movie. I don't want to be in this movie. This is a bad movie. And then
It's not like he had other movies to be in.
he's never done anything.
The only other thing he's ever done is one movie in 1996 and voiced the electric blanket in The Brave Little Toaster.
Whoa.
He didn't have other things to do. He may have literally been snowboarding with his girlfriend.
Also, and I just want to point this out. This has nothing to do with anything, but I noticed it last night. My wife and I are watching through Full House right now. Charlie, the actor who plays Charlie, and the actress that plays Stephanie Tanner on Full House, the same face.
I thought you were going to say they were related.
No.
I was gonna say they're married.
No. They have the same face. Not kind of. They have
Crossover
the
confirmed.
same face.
Crossover confirmed.
It is
Exactly.
disturbing to look at. Because yesterday I watched Santa Claus 3 and Full House within hours of each other. And I was like,
Whoa.
So then
Get Lucy.
Lucy.
Let's bring That's who I was leading to.
Yeah. So,
Let's talk about Lucy.
so Santa Claus says, "Hey, Lucy." She goes, "Hey, Uncle."
Scott!
And then she gives him a hug, and he says, "You have the warmest hugs." And they smile at each other. And then,
Keep that in mind, apparently, by the way.
yeah, that's coming back later. And then,
Remember that.
What is it? Chekhov's hug.
Yeah.
and then Neil
said
says, "You know,
Schrodinger's hug.
Charlie's been in the North Pole, but Lucy hasn't, and you're really building this thing up to have some emotional scars for her whole life," which I thought was pretty funny.
it was pretty
because he really wanted to go to the North Pole.
Neil was almost my super dump for this movie.
Really?
I loved Neil in the Santa Claus 1.
Yeah.
Loved him much less than Santa Claus 2.
I think he was still great in Santa Claus 2.
He is an imbecile in
He's
the Santa
so
Claus
dumb.
3.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's like
I know.
he like really wants the best for Charlie in Santa Claus 1.
He's a
and by this-
doctor.
Well, he goes from being a psychiatrist to being like a yoga instructor,
Like a
Zen
granola
teacher.
dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's so stupid.
I did laugh when the Zen music came on in the background.
I rolled my eyes very hard.
No, I laughed. I laughed when he was like, if you ever get stressed with the presents, just take some time for you. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, he's doing yoga.
And when he was like, let's take a feelings inventory. I laughed at that, but like everything else with the whole, like, if I'm Neil, if I'm a full grown man and Jack Frost is like, you shouldn't have done that, I'm punching him in the face.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna protect my wife and my daughter, and I'm gonna punch him in the face.
At least telling Jack Frost to take a feelings inventory.
Yeah. At least being like, hey Jack, maybe relax a little bit.
Maybe do some yoga.
Do downward dog.
That's what psychologists do.
Apparently.
So they end up taking Neil, Laura, and Lucy to the North Pole, and at the same time bringing the in-laws to the North Pole, which is
Sandman
Canada.
puts them to sleep. They dream that they went through an airport.
Okay, I do quickly want to pump on the scene where the sleigh flies around and you don't see Laura, Neil, and Lucy. And then as it turns the corner, Neil's eyes are huge in the goggles and he's just smiling like, ah!
I did laugh at that
laughed
scene too.
out loud at that.
I didn't.
Well, who plays the father-in-law?
I don't remember his name.
Oh. No, I know his name.
You need to take an IMDb break?
Yeah.
Let's pitch to IMDb.
No, I can't remember his name.
Sponsor to the show.
IMDb, big fan of the show. If you ever want to look up who plays the father-in-law in a movie, IMDb is a place to go.
Go ahead and check it out. It stands for Internet Movie Chunky Base. They're going to tell
Santa
us.
Claus 3, the escape clause. Let's see.
We should have our own app, IMCB.
Let's see.
One more scroll.
Let's see. Alan Arkin.
Yeah,
Yep,
that's right.
his
Alan
name.
Arkin.
Alan Arkin. I thought that no one else could be the father-in-law
He was great.
besides him.
I loved Alan Arkin.
Because
I hated every moment he was on screen.
Oh,
Really?
no,
he
not
was
at all.
such a jerk.
He was awful.
But that's not him as an actor.
No, I know. You're right.
I think him as an actor is the only person that could
Be
say
that
those
grumpy,
lines
yeah.
and me not just vehemently hate him.
No, I agree.
I was
That's
kind of
good.
like,
I love, and at the end when he's like, "Your father Christmas," that means I'm father-in-law Christmas. I thought that was so funny.
and I don't think anyone could deliver that line.
Yeah.
Anyone
Except him.
else would be like, boo, but he does it. and
Let
it's
me
funny.
rephrase. He did a great job with what was given to him.
Yes.
I hated his character so much.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, nobody is that mean.
Speaking of people who did a
Nobody.
great job with what was given to them, Martin Short was very fun to watch in this movie, to me. I know you guys feel differently. I hated Jack Frost, but it is so clear that Martin Short was just like, oh my gosh, you guys, I get to be in the Santa Claus 3.
Disagreed. I think that Martin Short was like, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm going to get a paycheck at the end of this. And I
could be it
think
too.
that he was just excited for a paycheck.
Here's the thing, though. And this is going to be my super pump, and I don't know if it's allowed because it's not technically part of the movie. My super pump is the first,
Santa Claus one.
Vincent D'Onofrio from Daredevil.
my super pump is the first minute and a half of the credits when it's the bloopers.
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
the
that was pretty
movie.
funny.
That was so funny.
I
And
love bloopers. I
Tim
think
Allen-
every
Oh, yeah,
movie should end
bloopers are
with
great.
bloopers.
Tim Allen and Martin Short just hanging out was so fun to watch.
Goodwill Hunting ends, and it's just like, boop. It's not your fault. Oh my God.
That's true. I think every comedy should end
exactly.
with bloopers.
Exactly. Well, and I think that they watched this whole movie. I like to imagine at the company screening, they gathered everybody together, like, all right, here's what we've been working on. And they played it, and everybody was just like,
Yikes.
oh no. And they're like, what if we put bloopers at the end? Maybe people will watch that and just only remember that.
And to prove that we knew this was
We
ridiculous
knew
as
this
well.
was dumb. We knew this. Look, they're being funny. We told them not to be funny on purpose.
Let me do something
The
here at the
bloopers were funnier
podcast,
than the
which I
movie.
think is a first for me because
Just leave.
You yeah.
Quit on air.
I'm out of here. You like Green Lantern and we didn't.
Yeah.
You like Suicide Squad and we didn't.
Yeah.
I feel
It's
like
my favorite
I haven't
movie.
had that yet.
Okay.
So here's
David,
what
don't.
I'm going to say.
David,
I
don't.
don't like Santa Claus 3, but here's the thing I'm going to say.
David, don't.
I like Santa Claus 3 better than Santa Claus 2.
You're wrong.
David, no.
Here's why though. Here's why. It's the
Because you're an idiot.
it's the strength and the power.
Shut up.
It is the strength and the power of going into a movie and expecting nothing. And watching this movie being like, this movie's gonna get me nothing, and me watching going, so stupid. And in Santa Claus 2, I was expecting something like Santa Claus 1, and they destroyed that for me. They got me. Because in this, I think it was a win-win for Disney. Because here's what they said. If Santa Claus 3 sucks, they're like, oh, what were you expecting? You saw Santa Claus 2, right? And if Santa Claus 3 is awesome, they're like, ha, weren't expecting that, were you? And so I was watching this movie, and I enjoyed it more than Santa Claus 2.
David.
Yeah, I disagree with
You guys have all
fully.
had one, so like chill out for a second.
You were supposed to destroy the Santa Claus,
Not join them. No, this movie's bad, and
is
I
a
think
bad
that you
movie.
should.
It's a terrible movie.
No. I think no. I think you should be ashamed of what you just said, and I think Doja and I are gonna have to have a long talk
Yeah.
about whether or not
and
you're-
have our own podcast now.
Oh, okay, Green Lantern, Suicide Squad. Cool.
Hey guys, we just like razz each other. Like that's what like we just like
It's our new podcast called Grantern Squad.
Lantern Squad.
They're breaking the chunks.
Yeah, so let's finish out talking about Lucy.
Oh,
Yeah.
We
gosh.
mentioned Scott saying, "Lucy, you got the warmest hugs. It's almost like magic."
Which we would never think that would come
I'm
back.
telling you, it was
And-
Chekhov's
and
hug,
save the movie.
100%.
Yep. If you introduce a magic hug in the first act, it
gonna
has
be
to be fired
significant.
in the third act.
Yes, and so what happens is at the very end they freeze Laura and Neil, and Santa, Tim Allen is Santa again, and then they're like, "Look what I found in the freezer! Look what I found in the pantry! It's Laura and Neil," and they're like, "Unfreeze him, Jack Frost." And he's
Nobody
like,
seems overly concerned, by the way.
yeah, they're kind of like, "This
Aw, man.
stinks," but to be fair, maybe they're like, "This can be reversed."
But they
real
didn't know
quick."
that. They were
It's
like,
true.
And Jack Frost reveals the only way that they can unfreeze them.
Yeah, the
too.
only way they can the only way that I can unfreeze them is if I unfreeze myself, and that's
And I'll
never
never
going.
do that.
What?
That's the so like
So was Jack Frost at one point just regular Martin Short, and then something bad
froze?
happened to him, and he froze himself?
see. Well, my thought was like, so that cocoa machine is just done.
Can't unfreeze
Like,
anything that he
Because
freezes.
Jordan loves the cocoa in this movie, and he's like, "Oh, am I never going to see that again? Because that's a problem."
Because
Because
it's like if everything he freezes stays frozen, it's just it finished.
It's over. Most
Yeah.
of the North Pole is done.
Yeah. How did they finish making the toys?
Well, here's the thing. Here's how they finished making the toys. While Santa was outside on the balcony, no time passes while he's outside
No.
on the balcony. So they've got realistically about 10 minutes in which Mother
Less. It has to be less.
Mother Nature and the Super Friends come alongside the elves.
per Charlie's invitation,
Per Charlie's invitation.
How did Charlie reach out to them?
How
Did
does he
pull a
know?
tooth
Did he pull
again?
another tooth?
yeah, I think that he should have done that at the end and be like, "Ching." He's
here's the
missing
deal.
another tooth,
All it takes is
and his girlfriend left him because of that. That's why he's not snowboarding in Colorado.
one regular human child, a few magic people, and all of the elves do Christmas without Santa Claus.
Easily, too.
Easily.
And also, let's address one more thing. This entire movie takes the entire movie, except for the first,
bookend, the flashbacks.
except for the
Yeah.
bookends, is one day.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true.
The punishment of Jack Frost, the flashback sequence, going to get the in-laws, everybody coming, people getting frozen, fixing it, solving it, going, delivering, ending the movie, all Christmas Eve.
One day.
I think if I am ever given like a terminal sentence where a doctor's like, you have 3 months to live, every day for those 3 months, I'm going to watch the Santa Claus 3 because
It extends time.
this is a 90-minute movie and it felt like it was 6 hours long.
It's very true.
It was horrible.
So you can live an entire lifetime in 3 months of Santa Claus
If you,
3.
theoretically, if you just watch Santa Claus 3
You'll never die.
on repeat, you will live forever.
That's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
The only escape clause from watching Santa Claus 3 is wishing that you'd never seen Santa Claus 3.
You hold the DVD and say, I wish I'd never seen this movie at all.
Well, so let's go back. They freeze Laura and Neil.
Yeah.
Right.
Say the only way that we can unfreeze them is if I unfreeze, Jack Frost speaking.
And I'll never
And
do
I'll
that.
never do that. And then Santa thinks for a second, looks at Lucy and says something like,
Do you think it'll
"You
work?
No,
think-
no, no,
you
no.
think,
He
like, you can
literally
do
only
it.
says,
you can do it, Lucy."
Lucy?
Yeah.
And then she goes, do you think it'll work?
And I thought, oh crap, she's one of these mythological creatures because she has Santa DNA. And then I
She
thought,
doesn't,
But she
though.
doesn't.
that's
She
my next thought
doesn't,
though.
though.
My
Me
next
and
thought was
Laura.
like, oh wait, no, she can't because
He's not actually her uncle.
I know.
He is her
Well,
mother's ex-husband.
It's true.
Based on the track record of this series of movies, I was almost positive that Lucy was going to pull out some piano wire, kick his knees back, and strangle him to death in the middle of the floor because
He's like-
murder is fine here.
We killed Bernard,
Honestly,
we killed Santa 1, we killed
what he
Mrs. Claus 1.
What he
It's
should have
fine.
done is said, elves, do what you did to Mrs. Claus. and they just and they become the gremlins and they're like,
light her on
What he
fire.
should have done is whip out an army of those giant toy soldiers from Santa Claus.
No.
2.
But here's the thing: those are just gone.
Oh, yeah, you're right. They're
No,
gone.
no, but like just
and also
gone.
the growing and shrinking machine is
Just gone.
It's gone.
Shrink Jack Frost.
But so then Lucy goes up to Jack Frost and gives him a hug, and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I feel so warm inside. And she goes, I'm warming your heart, which was adorable. I don't care what you say. It was adorable.
Side note, the actress that plays Lucy is our age.
Right now?
Yes.
What?
Yep.
Dang.
I remember as a child being like, that's a baby. But like she is a month younger than me.
Wow.
So she's older than me.
Yeah.
Big fan of the show.
Lucy, if you're listening, you want to be a guest star.
Yeah, seriously.
I think so. Let me talk about Lucy because so it made no sense that she had this.
Well, she even says the word
magical
magic
power.
hugs.
Yeah.
She even she
Yeah.
says the
Her
word
hugs-
That makes
magic
no
hugs.
sense.
Here's the thing. Santa Claus, an incomprehensibly magical being, says to his ex-wife's daughter, your hugs are so warm, it's almost like magic. Her hugs are literally
Actual magic.
Literally actual magic.
But not only are they actual magic, they both seemed to have some sort of knowledge that her hugs were magic. There was no like
because the snow globe
try
had a
hugging them,
snowman
let's see
that
what
turned
happens.
pink.
Like that's
No, it makes sense now to me.
no, I get it.
Lucy's magic hugs are my super dump for this movie.
Yeah.
That is hands down the very worst thing
I
about the
get it.
entire month of December.
Lucy's Magic Hugs is actually my favorite indie band though, which is cool.
Well, so I want to stay on Lucy for a second
Yep.
because here's something that is my super dump.
Okay.
So they go to the North Pole, and Tim Allen is regular Tim Allen. He's no longer Santa. He goes to the North Pole, which Jack Frost
Frost.
has completely changed and made it a place where people can come and tour. And he runs into Neil and Lucy,
Right.
Yeah.
and they're different. They're different people
Right.
because they're not the Lucy and Neil that he knows.
Right.
He talks to Neil about why did you
Which I
leave
have
Laura?
a huge problem with.
Because them and Laura divorced. But
Well,
let me stay on Lucy for a
yeah,
second.
yeah.
Because Lucy's like, he's like, hey, Lucy. And she's like, what? Who are you? Like,
Get out my face.
Get out my face, Uncle Scott. And she's like, I want to go on the ride.
She calls him Mr. Calvin.
Yeah.
Which is a far more appropriate name for him.
Sure.
She's a jerk.
Yeah.
And we have that thought of like, oh, this is what Lucy would be like if she didn't have the influence of Santa.
But then
But then then he goes like, hey, can you do something for me? And she's like, I think I can. And she becomes sweet again.
Yeah.
So they completely disregard this narrative that like Lucy's a jerk without his influence, but at the very end, like, I guess she's going to be
you want to talk
cool
about
again.
disregarding a narrative?
Yeah, talk to me.
When Neil says we divorced because Charlie didn't want me to be his dad, he wanted you to be his dad, and felt like I was stepping in. That's not the plot of the first movie at all.
No.
The plot of the first movie is about a dad trying to be the dad of his son, who honestly kind of is vibing
didn't-
more with his stepdad.
Charlie
than
didn't want
anything.
him to be his dad.
Like he was super into Neil being his stepdad in the first movie, and that's what makes the first movie so cool. Is it's not like abandon Neil, come with me. It's like, hey, Neil can also be your stepdad figure,
can be
but
your
like
dad,
I
yeah.
want to be your dad
Yeah,
still
yeah.
too because I love you.
It
And like
undermines
in
the
that
heart of that
scene,
movie.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And Laura might as well have been like, I haven't heard that name in years. She goes,
Laura, huh?
yeah.
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. This
Yeah,
movie
she-
gives Santa Claus so much credit. He single-handedly saved his ex-wife's second marriage, kept Charlie from becoming a punk. He single-handedly
Kept Lucy from being a
kept
punk for
his
a little bit.
ex-wife and her husband's daughter
Yeah.
from being horrible.
Yeah. I mean,
Unbelievable.
but to be fair,
He
it's
single-handedly
Tim
kept-
Allen.
He
as
is
Santa
Tim the Toolman
Claus.
Taylor.
kept Carol Newman from getting burned out at his son's high school.
No, she didn't get burned out. She just ran out of lives to destroy. That's what Laura says.
Jeez.
And I'm honestly disappointed that they didn't show Laura they didn't show Carol in the flashback.
Exactly.
I think they should have shown Carol like unhappily married to somebody or something like that.
That
but
should have been-
honestly, I
And
think they should have shown
he beats the
nothing.
crap out of
That
out of
that
this
should have
husband.
been
and murders him because that's the theme of
that
these
should have
movies.
been the emotional heart of that flashback scene. If we want to include that flashback, it should be about him trying to connect with Carol, because that's the thing. He can't connect with Carol at the North Pole as Santa. And he says it's because all this stuff is in the way. And so now we flash back. That stuff is no longer there. So he should be free to connect
Yeah.
with Carol
Well,
and fall in love with her
but
again.
that's what they imply happened. But it
Because
because
he literally didn't there.
well,
His-
but when he
his
comes
emotional-
back, he literally says, when he comes back to the present, remember, he's been gone for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And when he comes back, he goes, no, Carol, I'm back.
I'm back. I've missed you so much.
What does that mean?
Yeah. That would have been so much more powerful. I missed you so much if she had been married to somebody else or like completely closed.
And
told-
she says, I missed you too. And it's like, hey, Carol, you're married to Santa. Like, he's in the busy season. Like, like definitely, like, he can probably work on some stuff, but like, you knew this.
They gave Carol virtually nothing to do in this movie except complain.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem like a real character. She just seems like an obstacle for Santa to overcome.
Well, and she came from Santa Claus 2. Like, one of the things I loved about her character in Santa Claus 2 is she was like really strong and like kind of like this independent woman who like obviously falls in love with Santa and like is very happy. Sure. But like ultimately she was like, had some backbone and some sass and attitude. Gone.
Yeah.
Completely gone in this movie.
But in the logic of this movie, when you become Mr. and Mrs. Claus, you do become more jolly.
But jolly doesn't mean pushover necessarily.
dumb.
Yeah.
It does for me. So here's the thing.
Are we ready to move into rating?
I feel like there's probably something else to take a dump on in this movie. I super pumped and dumped real quick.
Yeah.
You super pumped and super
I
dumped?
super pumped and dumped.
What was your super dump?
Super dump was Lucy being a jerk, and then 5 seconds later
you're right.
being the Lucy
You're right,
that we
you're
all
right.
know and love.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
That wasn't
And
great.
every elf that was like doing their job, like, and wouldn't the elves remember that was? I thought that was gonna be a plot point.
That the
is
elves
the elves remember, and they're like, "Hey Santa, like, how are you?" Or like, at least, "Hey Scott,
Yeah.
you know, we miss you around here." But it's like it wipes the memories of everybody.
Well, I thought the elves were gonna like help him revolt against Jack Frost.
Yeah.
And then it was just like we're
Guys.
slaves.
Okay. This movie sucks.
It's bad.
And he
But
did.
like, I'm glad you love it.
I'm glad
but,
it's
like,
your favorite movie.
It is my
David.
favorite movie, and I did think it was a little bit of a dump that he clearly had a recording pen and clicked it in front of him.
So does it have to just be Jack Frost's voice? He's not actually saying it.
Yeah, that's what I didn't
The
understand.
magic is just that the snow globe
man.
hears the voice of the current Santa.
I do have another dump to throw out. Both times that the snow globe thing happens, they're holding on to the person holding the snow globe for so long, and they're just like, whoa, whoa, for forever.
The blooper of them filming that scene
Is very
the
funny.
Funniest
Yeah,
thing.
it's
both
very
times.
funny.
There's a cut of them filming both. time
And
travel
let me end on a
scenes.
positive note.
No.
Unlike
How?
you negative Nancy's. Because I did really love the scene where they do go back to when he first became Santa.
Oh yeah.
And they used the actual clip from the first movie where he was like, "This guy was huge."
You know
yeah.
why you loved it?
Because I loved the first movie.
Because it was the first movie.
That
It's
was
true.
the best minute
But
and a half of this movie because I was watching the one
I
that
was
I
a
liked.
little bit afraid that they would try and just put a wig and makeup on Tim Allen and him be like, "Oh, this guy's you," and try to deliver the lines. And then
Charlie.
I went to kind of hoping that they would do that, so then I could get a 18-year-old Charlie be like, "Dad, you gotta see this."
With his Stephanie Tanner face. So yeah, I guess
Rate it.
moving to ratings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here at 2 Chunks and a Hunk, we've come up with a flawless rating system, one that we're very proud of, called the Scientific Cinema Scale. We're going to walk you through that right now before we throw out our ratings for this movie. So the best thing that we can ever say about a movie is own it, don't lend it, buy that poster. After that, the next best thing we can say is buy it.
Buy it.
You know, own it, make sure you have it. The next best thing after that we can say is rent it. You know, toss a couple bucks, watch it, forget it, you know, that kind of thing. Right underneath that, we've got something we like to call stream it. Now, stream it means if you don't own it, but you pay for subscription services that have it, go ahead and watch it. Don't spend extra money. Do not spend extra money. But you can go ahead and watch it if it's on the streaming service. Underneath that is a subcategory we call forget it. This is for movies that you're better off if you just pretend they didn't exist. And then lastly, the worst thing that we could ever say about a movie: God hath forsaken us.
I'll go first.
All right.
God hath forsaken us.
Oh, okay.
This
Is
is
that your first one that you've given out?
this is the first ever God hath forsaken us on the show.
No,
I
it's
think.
not.
No.
I gave Suicide Squad a God hath forsaken us.
And I did too.
I don't remember that. I loved that movie. God hath forsaken us. This movie is hands down the very worst movie that we've watched for this podcast. Hands down the very worst movie that I've watched this year.
Yeah.
Hands down the very worst movie that I've watched this decade.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is
okay.
a terrible, terrible movie.
Don't hold back now.
There you go. I'll go next. Simply because of the fact that this is worse than the other worst movie,
Which was?
I hate Suicide Squad, and this
No
was
way.
worse than Suicide
That's a
Squad.
masterpiece.
And so, for that reason alone, but for a billion other reasons as well, I'm giving this an easy God hath forsaken us.
So easy.
This
Easiest
is
rating decision.
this movie truly would have been better to have never been made in the first place.
Yeah. I'm struggling between like buy it and rent it,
Gosh.
I think I'm gonna give it a forget it. Because I think you should definitely forget this movie. I think the movie is awful. Although I did enjoy it more than Santa Claus 2, it is a clearly worse movie than Santa Claus 2.
Sure.
I just enjoyed it better because I came in with the expectations so low.
That's funny.
But I think you should totally forget it. I would rather watch this than Suicide Squad, though. That's personally, 100%. I would be like, come on, Jack Frost. So I'll give it forget it.
I don't really have any final thoughts other than hashtag bring back Bernard.
Bring back Bernard.
Bring back Bernard.
But please don't make another Santa Claus movie.
Hashtag bring back Bernard, but don't make Santa Claus 4, please.
Just make David Krumholtz dress up like Bernard, take a picture, and I'm good. That's all I really need.
Let's have a Bernard movie.
Ooh,
The Bernard Claus.
The Bernard Claus, where Bernard takes over.
And
I'd watch that.
He's got just
that sounds
crazy long hair with beads.
Directed by Seth Rogen, though.
That sounds like a sitcom.
The Bernard Claus.
Bernard takes over.
Bernard takes it. Well, it's just Charles in charge, but different.
Yeah, I guess.
And he wears
Bernard takes
sunglasses
over.
the whole movie.
So before we say goodbye,
Yes.
we got a couple of shout outs to give. These are people that have
Shout
hashtagged official chunky on social media, and we want to say thank you by tossing out a shout out to their names. So those people are as follows. We've got one from Ben Trotter, one from Taylor Hohulen, one from Adam Rader,
Come on.
one from Nick Mulanos, and then we have a very special thank you
Yeah.
to our first ever sponsor of the show, Stephen Baker,
Yeah.
who has shouted us out 1.6 billion times.
Every single tweet
And by
on
that
his
we mean
Twitter
3.
is hashtag official chunky.
His
You don't-
Twitter name
it really?
is at no.
Okay.
His Twitter name is at Steven the Chunkhead.
So we're gonna go ahead and bestow Stephen Baker with the title Stephen Chunky Baker.
Yep.
Chunky
on,
Banker.
That Chunky Bake.
Banker on accident.
Chunky Bake.
So Stephen Chunk Bake. We want to say thank you to Stephen Chunky Bake. If you want to get shouted out, just make sure you go on social media and hashtag official chunky. That's CHUNKY. So only final thing is by the time this episode comes out, we will have already, gosh,
Well, let me say this. We're probably not friends when this episode
by the
came
time this
out.
comes out.
When this comes
I
out
don't know.
on
I think
Tuesday.
we'll be better friends because I'm going to have to lean on you guys
That's
to
the
survive.
thing. It's two ends of the spectrum. We're either going to be so close and so well
Eternally
bonded,
bonded.
We're never
or
gonna
we're
speak
going
each other
to
again.
hate each other.
Yeah, it's
So
one or
what
the
we're
other.
saying is, by the time this episode comes out on Tuesday, we will have already watched Fred Claus
For 24
straight hours.
Goodness gracious.
And we're
so
doing
stupid.
that. In that, we're going to be live streaming that. And
We-
we
we
will have
did
already
live-
live streamed it.
we did live
I'm
stream
telling
it.
you about this event that's already over.
Yeah.
So you know about it. You know what happened. So if you don't,
It's almost encouragement for us that when this we can do it.
Oh, yeah. We
let's
got
take
it.
a moment to congratulate ourselves. on what
Good
we've done.
job. Good job on
Two Junks and a Hunk,
what you
good
did
job,
already.
you guys.
I'm
I know
so
you're,
proud of
I know
me.
you're tired. I know you just watched Vincent Vaughn's Christmas extravaganza.
Have you seen? I've never seen Fred
I've never
Claus.
I
seen
watched
Fred
it
Claus.
once and it is awful.
Hey, just kidding, you guys. I have seen Fred Claus for over 24 hours.
You did.
At this
Just
point,
finished.
yeah, no, I
At this
have.
point, we have. Good job.
I wish I'd never seen Fred Claus at all.
You got to say it all.
Good
But-
job, David. Good job, Jordan.
Thanks.
Good job, Doge.
So-
we knew you could do it.
I guess the important thing is the next episode the next regular episode that comes out after this one will be our review of not only Fred Claus the movie, but of our experience watching it for 24 straight
We're reviewing
hours.
Fred Claus and our own event, a very Freddy Claus.
But that will be our final episode for 2017.
Yeah.
And we will be taking a short several week break and then coming back sometime in January,
We need a sabbatical.
starting with the MCU.
yeah.
And we're super excited. We're jumping
That's
right in.
Marvel Cinematic Universe, for those of you not in
We're
the
jumping in
know.
with Iron Man 1, and I'm very excited
Yes.
about it. So if you miss our superhero stuff, we're coming right back in.
Yeah,
just
we're not
as
going
hot
to
as
talk about
before.
Santa from now on.
Wait, I thought
We're
we're
Santa
we're
podcast.
starting with Fantastic Four.
No,
the
don't
first
even
one.
do it.
Because that's part of the MCU. That's
No,
canon.
don't
It
even
is
do it. I hate you. So anyway, for Two Chunks and a Hunk, I'm Jordan.
Doge.
David.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, first of all, that's awesome. And second, what are you doing with your life?
If you want to be the first to know when we drop new episodes, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And if you want a shout out on our next episode, then post on social media #officialchunky.
That's CHUNKY. And with this knowledge, you too can fly. Hey, that rhymes. That's pretty good.
Yeah.